That's very startling these days. It just started happening. Like, I don't know, I must have updated something I was not aware of. Suddenly Zoom is talking to us, and I don't know if that's a good thing or not. All right. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sarva Mangala Mangalye Shive Sarvata Sadike Sharanye Trambake Gauri Narayani Namostute. Namaste, everyone. How's the sound? Is it okay? Okay, cool. I was just looking at the meter and going, oh. So welcome to Wednesday Night Mantras. We are beginning a new series today. So as always, well, it won't necessarily always be this way, but for now, we're working with 3-week series, which means we're getting together once a week on Wednesday nights to do the practice together. And so that's 3 times. And if you were to do the full week after each of these sessions, then you would get 21 days worth of practice on this, and that's enough for you to get a sense of what's really going on with these particular mantras that we're working with, and whether or not there's something more there for you. If there is, I would suggest at least continuing onwards from the 21, doubling that up more or less up to 40 would be really wonderful. And then something may happen by the end of the 40 days. But really the idea here is to sort of, move around a bit and get a sense for different mantras and what their energy is. And we're going to work with some fairly complex stuff and things that I perhaps don't do all that often, which is, this particular 3-week series is a perfect example. So what we will be doing for the next 3 weeks is working with the energy of Kālī. So Kālī is one of those incredibly evocative images and figures with a very powerful effect. Just from the visual image is enough, I think, to really sort of spark some sort of reaction in people, and maybe that's very much the way that it's intended. Let me bring up our thing that we're going to use today. So here's one of the sort of more popular images of Kālī from India. There's a particular style of this sort of devotional art. I can't remember exactly the name of it, but it's maybe not the most savage. It's not my favorite, but I grabbed it anyways because I know it was one that everybody's kind of seen a bunch. But you've got the bloody sword and the tongue sticking out and the severed head with the blood coming out and being collected in the bowl and all this kind of stuff. Like, it's very intense. And the belt with all the arms on it and the severed heads in a kind of a garland around her neck, and all this kind of stuff. It's very intense. I prefer images in which the skin is really black rather than blue. I mean, in Indian art, it's sort of like, I don't know, the dark colors like blue and green and black and all of that are sort of, to an extent, are interchangeable. There's a word shyama that means basically like a dark color, and it could refer to a dark blue or a dark green. And Kālī's name is actually derived from the word Kālī. So where Kālī is two long vowels, if you make them two short vowels, you get the word Kālī. And Kālī is a word that literally means dark or without color. So very much referring to a black color, sort of almost like a void. It's hard to represent that in art, but there are some cool images, and then maybe I'll try to find another one for next week. But this one gets the job done for us. So you can see the weapons that she's carrying in her hand, various hands there, definitely relating to this idea of the warrior goddess. So we know that there's some kind of intense, working through inner conflicts that's going to be happening here. So if you were here last week, we talked about the Buddhist deity Vajrapāṇi, the Bodhisattva Vajrapāṇi. And there's very much of a similar kind of thing. I took art history when I was in college. I did a fair amount of it. And there's a word that I learned in art history that it relates to this. The word is apotropaic. Very fancy word. But what it means is like a scary guardian kind of a thing. So with Vajrapāṇi, with Kālī as well, and with so many other spiritual images, you have this very terrifying kind of a persona that is, on the face of it almost seems like a demonic entity, but in reality what's going on is that this is a terrifying being that is on your side, that is working for you and against your enemies, so to speak. So whenever that happens, then you get, the whole thing becomes a lot less terrifying, really. Like, the monster is only really scary until you realize that the monster is, like, on your side, right? And there's lots of wonderful mythologies and fairy tales about that very idea. And so many images that are like this, it's like the medieval cathedrals and stuff like that, Christian churches, always had these like gargoyle figures that were carved into them, and that was their purpose. The gargoyle was supposed to be scary enough that it would scare away any of the demons or bad influences that might be coming there. So the gargoyles don't represent demons, they represent guardians who are there to help you in some way as you pass within. As you pass within the doors of the cathedral, the gargoyles scare any of the demonic influences that might be on you or get scared off of you. And so there's a lot, there is an aspect of that going on here. When I talk about, conflicts and battles and enemies and all that kind of stuff, it's important to place that all within the context of what we might call an inner struggle, or a battle that's going on inside of us. And this is very much, when you get into the mythology that comes to us from India, it's very much about this idea of the inner battle that's then portrayed as this sort of grand, epic story involving gods and demons and heroes and all sorts of other things. But those mythologies, as any good mythology does, is telling a story that then represents an exposition, so to speak, of an inner process that's going on inside of you. And that's very, very much true here. So in this case, what we're working against is the various aspects of ourselves that we would think of as being egoic, maybe. I'm not sure that that's the right word, but contracting in one way or another. So our purpose here is to expand our consciousness, and we engage in various spiritual practices for the purpose of expanding our consciousness towards a state of liberation where we no longer are bound by the sort of finite existence that we live in now. But the corollary to that is that there are things that happen that are expanding of consciousness, and then there are things that happen which are contracting of consciousness, right? So your consciousness can grow, and your consciousness can also shrink, essentially. It can get tighter and smaller and more separated is really the nature of that. So within the mythology, then, the aspects of ourselves that cause us to contract, which are typically, we think of them as being ego qualities in one way or another. It's like fear or jealousy or greed, hatred, sort of senseless violence, any number of, desire for power over others for the purpose of gratifying yourself. All of these other sort of negative ego traits that cause our consciousness to actually contract and cause us to separate from others, right? Rather than unifying us with others, it separates us even more and more and more. And those qualities then are sort of personified into these sort of overblown demonic figures that are, these huge terrifying things. These demonic figures are then involved in all sorts of shenanigans in the stories that's causing the universe to sort of fall into a state of chaos, is ultimately the nature of what goes on. And that's usually where there's typically two very specific classes of divine beings who engage with these demons in a struggle to bring us back or to re-expand us in some way. And those are either the avatars of Vishnu, so Rama, Krishna, Narasimha, and the rest. So there's lots of stories about that, especially Rama. The Ramayana is all about this, right? The Ramayana is this incredible story that reads like a mythological narrative, but it's all about energy and what's happening inside of you. And each one of the characters represents some aspect of yourself, essentially. And you can really read it that way, and it becomes exceedingly powerful practice in and of itself. So the avatars of Vishnu are one, and the other class of beings are the warrior goddesses. The warrior goddesses then are called upon essentially when things have gotten so far out of hand that there's an imminent destruction of the universe, perhaps, that's about to occur. And when a situation has gotten that bad, that all the sentient beings in the universe are crying out to Divine Mother to save us, then what will happen is some version of Divine Mother as a warrior goddess manifestation will appear, and will engage with whatever the demonic forces are that are creating the problem. And I don't know, it's pretty tough to defeat Divine Mother under any circumstances, generally speaking. So these warrior goddesses that appear to rebalance the situation, there is that, and that's certainly with the avatars of Vishnu. That's very much what it's about. It's about a rebalancing of the universe so that we can continue on with our dharma. And many of the warrior goddesses do this as well. So, like for example, Durga, the very popular warrior goddess Durga, is all about rebalancing, right? But Divine Mother takes this even further, right? So it's not necessarily always about rebalancing, right? She may come into a situation and say, the whole foundation of what's going on here is problematic and needs to just be torn down and rebuilt. right? From the beginning, because the foundations of what it's based on are flawed in some way, and are giving rise to these contracting qualities. So there's a certain point to be said where the warrior goddess appears as a defender and a protector, and sort of a one who helps to keep things in balance, versus the warrior goddesses who appear for the purpose of not only taking out the demonic enemies, so to speak, but also diving into how did these demonic entities even appear? Where did they come from? Right? What is it that gave birth to them and allowed them to grow and become as powerful as they are? And diving down into that and tearing that apart as well, right? So that because you could defeat the one demon, but if you have not addressed the cause of where that demon came from, then another one may appear. Another one probably will be born and appear and wreak its havoc again somewhere down the line. It's one of the things about the avatars of Vishnu; they keep having to come back, right? So one appears and rebalances things, and then after some period of time, stuff starts to fall apart again, and then they have to come back. Another one has to come back and rebalance it, and then it's going on and on and on. There's been 8 so far in the history of the earth. So in this case, when we call upon a warrior goddess like Kālī, that's what we're asking for, essentially. It's not just, defend me from this particular situation. It's not the Rakshama. It's not the protective mother, right? It's not just defending. It's actually going on offense, so to speak, and going in and figuring out, like, why is this even happening in the first place, and let's disassemble all of the bits and pieces that these contracting influences are forming from. So to that end, I would say the demonic image of Kālī is based on the idea of, in order to take apart the demons, she has to be able to think like one. Right? She has to be able to present something that is even more intense than what the demons themselves can present. She has to be able to instill, where the demons are based on this idea of creating fear in you, she has to be so intense that she's capable of creating fear in them, which knocks them completely off of their balance. The power of the contracting forces is based on fear, and if they are unable to project that fear, they no longer have any power, right? So it's intense stuff. If you're here right now, then there's some reason why you're here. I don't typically, this is not, so I advertise this as a Kālī sadhana, right? And I'd never spring stuff like this on people by surprise, because that's not a very nice thing to do. Now, it's not to be said that there's anything dangerous about anything that we're going to be doing. Kālī's primary interest, like any of the other deities, is in you becoming becoming liberated from your limited self, right? Her interest is in you rediscovering who it is that you truly are. That is what she is about, and she just has a very particular way of doing it that is quite literally cutting to the chase, so to speak. She's just going to go in there and dig up, like, what's the problem here, and dig it up. So it's the thing I will say about it is it's not dangerous and you won't be hurt by it, but that doesn't mean that it will be comfortable, right? It could be very uncomfortable, in fact, because you may need, if you're facing the inner demons and the inner struggle that's going on within you, that may mean facing some parts of yourself that you have not wanted to look at for a very long time. However, you cannot heal those things unless you look at them, right? You have to accept their existence in order to be able to release them. And that is effectively what she will do. And that's the thing. So if we look at this, let me just point this one thing out on the image, because it's definitely very evocative of what I'm talking about. This part, the really intense part, the severed head with the blood coming down into the bowl, and actually in other warrior goddess images, you'll see that she's taken the bowl and she drinks the blood out of it, right? And so this is one of those things inside of you. This is one of those demonic ego contracting forces that's inside of you, right? And so her job is to go in there and cut the head off that thing, right? And then what the blood represents is the energy, the life force, the prana energy that this demonic character has been withholding from you. And so she's collecting that now so that she can return it to you as a result of having completed this particular conflict, right? So you can start to dive into each one of the symbols in that image and begin to grasp what each one of them means. But that's probably the central part of the image, is that the severed head representing that, some limiting belief that you're carrying around with you, that within that limiting belief there's a certain amount of your life force energy that has been trapped by it, and that you don't have access to. And once that limiting belief is released, right? The image there is of the severing of the head, right? The releasing of that limiting belief. Then that prana energy, that life force energy, can be returned to you, and you become more of yourself ultimately through it. So ultimately with this stuff and anything that has to go with this, it's just be aware of what's going on for you, and I don't know, like if it gets too intense, you can always stop, right? There's nothing here that's outside of your ability to, in a mantra meditation practice, you always give permission for it to happen. I mean, in any spiritual practice, you're always giving permission for it to happen one way or another. You may not realize that you are all the time. That's how the shady gurus get power over you, is they convince you to give it to them, right? Freely, essentially. You may not realize that that's what you're doing, but that is what happens. And once you give control, then it's a little difficult to get it back sometimes. But there's a huge lesson in this that Kālī has to give us about being aware of what's happening and giving permission for yourself to grow. Ultimately, giving permission for yourself to release those beliefs that you carry around that are limiting you, and once you do that, allowing yourself to grow and become more of who you really are, which is probably why I'm interested in this mantra right now. Okay, so that's enough talking. We've been going on for a while here. Let me go over to the mantra. I'll do a translation of the mantra next week when we talk. This kind of do the preamble here. So we're just, keep those concepts in mind as we move forward, and we'll talk more about them as they relate to the specific words. So I think that what we're going to do is we're going to chant this mantra, which is the Kālī mantra, 2 times through. So 108 times, and then a brief pause, and then another 108 times. And then after that, we're going to do Shiva's mantra at the end. This is a pretty important thing. I think maybe in week 3 I'll talk more about this, about the relationship between Shiva and Kālī. But in this super iconic image of Kālī, like the most famous image of her, it's worth noting that Shiva is always there, right? He's always laying down underneath her foot, and this is also an incredibly important part of this image. But just to be clear about this, the idea behind doing the Shiva Mantra at the end is that Shiva Mantra will pacify the Kālī energy as you come out of the practice. So if there's any sort of churning up that may happen as a result, sort of this inner sort of reorganization of energy, then the Shiva Mantra that we do at the end will sort of soothe that in a lot of ways and make it easier for you to integrate it as you leave the practice and go into your life. And I always recommend that when working with a Kālī sadhana, is at the end of any Kālī sadhana that you do, just, the 108 repetitions of Om Namah Shivāya will help you to, really get the most out of it. But we'll talk more about that in a future thing. So, just to run through each word. Om, of course, everybody knows that. And then 3 bija mantras, which is the Tribija of the Kālī Trībīja Mantra, the 3 seeds, krīṁ, hrīṁ, hrīṁ, krīṁ, hrīṁ, hrīṁ, krīṁ, hrīṁ, hrīṁ. Kālī devyai svāhā. Om krīṁ, hrīṁ, Kālī devyai svāhā. I always pronounce this I now. Devyai. Om krīṁ, hrīṁ, Kālī devyai svāhā. And then Om namaḥ śivāya. Any questions before we get started? We can spend a little time afterwards talking if you want about it. Especially, it's always best to just kind of experience stuff and then talk about it. Okay, good. So as usual, I'll just get started and begin the chanting of the mantra and just join in as you pick up the rhythm of the words. Nice deep cleansing breath in through the nose, out through the mouth, and another in through the nose. Settling into the practice, allowing yourself to be calm and centered. Om krīṁ hrīṁ Kālī devyai svāhā. 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 Om krīṁ hum 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 hrīṁ hrīṁ Kālī devyai svāhā. Om krīṁ hum 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 hrīṁ Kālī devyai svāhā. Om krīṁ 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 hum 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 hrīṁ Kālī Kālī devyai svāhā. Om krīṁ hum hrīṁ 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 Kālī devyai svāhā. Om krīṁ 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 hrīṁ Kālī devyai svāhā. Om namaḥ śivāya. 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 Okay, so that concludes our practice for today. I'm going to go ahead and do the closing mantras because I know we ran rather a little bit over time. The next two sort of lecture parts in weeks 2 and 3 won't need to be nearly as long as that. There's just, when you introduce Kālī, there's a lot to unpack with that. So we'll be more on time next 2 weeks of this practice. So we'll go ahead and do the closing mantras, and then if you need to leave, you can roll out. If you have any questions, you can stick around. I'll be on for another 10 minutes or so. I posted the various links into the chat there. It's my donation link if you feel like donating anything for this. And then my YouTube channel, I will have this up and available on my YouTube channel hopefully tonight, maybe tomorrow. One of those, but it'll be one of those two. So if you want to pick up this practice and keep going with it, you can check in with that video tomorrow and start working directly with it. And then of course Margot's Facebook photo album and email contact in case you want to look at some malas to help you in your practice. So here we go. Nice long Om. Then Lokā samastā sukhino bhavantu 3 times, followed by Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Om Lokā samastā sukhino bhavantu. Lokā samastā sukhino bhavantu. Lokā samastā sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Namaste. Thank you all so much for joining in. I'm going to shut off the recording.